Interval notation. Interval notation is a type of notation that can be used to describe the solution set of an inequality. Interval notation is like the starting point and the stopping point of a graph. Remember, a graph gives the picture of the solution set for an inequality. So the interval notation will describe this graph, this picture of the solution set. So it will have a starting point, a comma, and a stopping point. The first thing you'll need to do before you can do interval notation is to draw the graph or work from a graph. And to get our starting point and stopping point, we're going to use parentheses or brackets just like the graph. Remember, these are determined by the inequality symbols. So if you have greater than or less than, these are going to be parentheses. And if you have an equals underneath, these are going to be brackets. And we will use the same on our interval notation for our starting point and stopping point. If the shaded area of the graph extends forever, we will need to use the infinity symbol. The infinity symbol in the interval notation always gets parentheses because you are never able to touch it. Our infinity symbol, if the graph goes forever to the right, it's like a sideways 8, and then it will get the parentheses. If it comes from the left, so it goes forever to the left, it will be a negative infinity, and it will have the parentheses. Let's write the interval notation for the double inequality that's graphed here. So we're going to have a starting point and a stopping point of the graph. We're describing this graph because that's the solution set. The starting point, or the leftmost point, is -1, and it gets a bracket, so ours should get the same. Then a comma. Your rightmost point of the graph is the 3, and it gets a parentheses, so your interval notation will get the same. Let's write the interval notation for a graph that extends forever in one direction. So remember, this one's going to use an infinity symbol. We want a starting point, a comma, and a stopping point. Well, this graph, we're starting from the left, and it's actually going forever in that direction. So we're never able to touch anything on the left. So this one is going to come from negative infinity. The stopping point, or the rightmost point on the graph, is going to be -1. And our notation will get a parentheses just like the graph. So the -1 is actually not included. So because it's coming from the negative, it's going forever in that direction. It is coming from negative infinity. And the infinities will always get parentheses. You're never able to touch it. We're going to continue, and then we stop at -1. That is the rightmost point of the graph. For this graph, the only difference is we have less than or equal to, and so we have a bracket on the -1. So for our interval notation, starting point, it's coming from the left. We're never able to touch that, so that will be from negative infinity. The stopping point will be the rightmost point, -1, and it's going to get a bracket just like our graph. For the interval notation on this graph, our leftmost, or starting point, is going to be -1. We need a parentheses just like our graph has. So do parentheses, -1, our comma, and this one continues forever to the right. It never stops. So it's going to go toward positive infinity, and that will always get a parentheses. For our last example, x is greater than or equal to -1. Our interval notation, our leftmost point is the -1, and we will need the bracket just like the graph. That's our starting point. This one goes forever to the right, so it never stops. It goes toward positive infinity, and infinity always gets a parentheses.